Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janna Vallabha Girivaradari Yashanandana Prajajanaranja Yashanandana Prajajanaranja Yamunatira Vanachari Shri Radha Krishna Radha Kanjana Shankara Chudamina Tasmai Shri Gurube Namaha Shri Chaitanya Vitamina Bhutale Swayani Pampara Nasike nirabhidhetam Doduyati bhasyati Tatra vayor gandhavaho Grano nasi jigritchataha Nasike nirabhidhetam Nasike nirabhidhetam Doduyati bhasyati Doduyati bhasyati Tatra vayor gandhavaho Tatra vayor gandhavaho Grano nasi jigritchataha Grano nasi jigritchataha Nasike nirabhidhetam Nasike nirabhidhetam Dodhuyati nabhaspati Dodhuyati nabhaspati Tatra vayor gandhavaho Tatra vayor gandhavaho Grano nasi jigriksataha Grano nasi jigriksataha Nasike in the nostrils Nirabhidhetam being developed Dodhuyati rapidly going Navasvati air respiration Tatra thereupon Vayu air Gandhavaha smelling odor Grana sense of smell Nasi in the nose Jigriksataha desiring to smell odors Jaya
Translation thereafter, when the Supreme Purusha desires to smell odors, the nostrils and respiration regenerate. The nasal instrument and odors came into existence, and the controlling deity of air carrying smell also became manifest.
reading about it.
You know, I have to Klesha. Yes? I am the Klesha, I go to Klesha, I have Klesha. You know this, right? I am the Klesha means misery caused by the body and mind. Right? You know this difference? I go to Klesha means misery caused by other living entities. And I have the Klesha means misery caused by Jaya.
By the COVID.
I like that Krishna means we don't perform the yajnas and deities problems or natural catastrophes. So I like Krishna.
Yeah.
So there's also the Adhika Purusha, Adhika Purusha, and Adhika Purusha. And these three are, by the cooperation of these three, there can be perception as well. Understand? So Adhika Purusha means the senses. So the senses are part of the soul body. They allow you to, for example, the sense of sight, the sense of hearing, the sense of smell, the sense of taste, the tactile sense. These senses are part of the subtle body. And the owner, or the possessor of that subtle body is called as the jiva, right? Because we possess a subtle body, right? So the Adhyatmika Purusha refers to that jiva who is using the senses to try to perceive things and so on. And it's called as the Adhyatmika Purusha. Okay? Different from Adhyatmika Purusha. And it's called Adhyatmika Purusha related, but Adhyatmika Purusha. He's called as a person also. Then the Adhyatmika Purusha. Adhyatmika Purusha means the sense organs. So you have the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the skin. This is called a sense organ. So the sense organ is different from the sense. The eye, this eye actually doesn't see. The sense sees. And it uses the organ as a window, for example, by which it sees through. You understand? So the body is like the vehicle, and the senses take the seat in that particular vehicle. So the sense organ is called as the Adi Bhautika Purusha. Also called as person. And the Adhyatmika Purusha is a devata that allows for the function of the sense in relationship to the sense organ. For example, the sun devata, Surya, or sun devata. So if there was no sun, no light, then even if you have a working sense and working sense organ, there can be no perception of light, right? Because all the lights are out, and no electricity, no fire, no sun. You cannot see, even if you have operating senses and sense organ, right? You still couldn't see. So the sense data is the potentiator of the function of the sense in relationship to the sense organ. That's called the Adhyatmika Purusha. So if there's perception as well, you need the cooperation of these three Purushas. You understand? If you have working sense, but you're a blind person, you cannot see. Also, right? And if something happens to the sense, or there are no sense objects you see, also there's perception. So these three are interdependent in the process of perception as well. You understand? So he's saying, when this comes up earlier in the chapter, it's saying that the jiva is having dependence on the function of these three Purushas in order to be witness. Alright? So although he sometimes refers to as ashray, he can also be called ashray who gives support to the body and the senses. He is not an independent ashray because he is dependent upon the cooperation of these three Purushas to proceed. You understand? Yes? Budindriya, the next version of Mahavata. Budindriya Mukhrana, Jaya Prabhu, let's say Krishna is like, blue is like the sapphire or like the rainbow. What is the meaning of that? Did you ever think about that? What is the meaning of that? Krishna's blue is not like blue in this material world. So what does it mean? Just like one time someone decided to talk about the opposite, and he said, "You black body at least." So he was wrong and said, "So should the car black? Black, huh?" Yeah. I mean, we'll get some private black ladies. Honestly, we get a lot. So yeah, Christian's black, and we're all saying, yes, Christian's black, but not black like you. So what does it mean like Christian blackness then? You only have reference to a material blackness, right? You ever seen spiritual blackness before? Christians call shaman. You ever seen spiritual blackness before? You have seen spiritual blackness? If you ask the time, they'll say, we know, we have not seen any spiritual blackness before. So when we hear in Shastra, the description of Christian's color, that he is, blackish color or dark like a monsoon cloud, what does it mean with that? You have no reference to the spiritual concept, so what does it mean with it? How do you understand it? You understand that? This question requires grammar question in the beginning of it, and he said in chapter 2 of council. So how is it possible to describe? That's a good question, isn't it? You ever seen any spiritual black people? You've seen it? No? So when it says Christian black color, what do you think inside your head? What do you think inside your head when you hear Christian as blackish color? You think of some Caribbean person?
No.
You think of some person from the urban area? Do you hear Christian's blackish color, or is it what comes in your head? So material black color comes in your head, isn't it?
Yeah.
So is that Christian?
No.
You're getting confused now.
The Christian's blackish color isn't material.
Christian blackish color is material. Yes, we agree with that. So when you hear that Christian is black, and you try to think of that, what does it mean? This is part of Shakari's question. What is the meaning of all these words that you use? Because Christian has transcended the primary or even the indirect meaning of the words cannot be anything that Christian, because he is existing in a different ontological category. So what do you mean when you're using all the words? What does it mean by all that? This is a good question, isn't it? Anyway, we don't have time to look at all the philosophy that you're using in your own time. So when the answer is coming from Shukadeva Goswami, who didn't be able to Brahman, so he says the Prabhu, the Supreme Lord Krishna, Paramahansa also can be said, the Prabhu generated, he generated the living entity, Jnana, the Buddhi Indriya Brahman. He is given the Buddhi Indriya Brahman. You understand? Buddhi is intelligence, mind, prana, senses, and will. So the Prabhu generated these things. Have you generated these things? You generated the intelligence, mind, senses, you generated? No, the Prabhu generated, right? So the idea is, this is the indirect answer to this question. If you didn't have Buddhi and Indriya in the prana, then even this material world will be unnirisha, will be ineffable. Because how do you describe the material world? You need Buddhi and Indriya in the prana, isn't it? If there was no Buddhi and Indriya in the prana, could you describe this material world? Suppose you have no senses. Then how are you taking the information from the material world? Is it possible?
No.
It's not like that. You're nervous. Look at the answer. You need India, you need intelligence to organize information, right? So who is giving that Buddhi India? Who is giving it?
Krishna.
The Prabhu is giving it, right? So the Prabhu did not give his mercy in the form of these faculties, then even this material world will be unnirisha, right? Even this material world will be not described. So then have you generated this Buddhi in your mind? You generated?
No.
Who generated?
Krishna.
Krishna. That means that you're not independent and sheltered. That's the final meaning. Because this is the idea in this chapter.
adishtan for the sense object, which is odor or smell. After the adishtan manifests, simultaneously, sense. So what is this sense? The sense is the sense of smell, right? I don't know how else to call it as this. Sense is the sense of smell, right? So this adishtan is like sense organ. That is called as adibhotika purusha part. And the sense of smell is the adhyatmika purusha part. Then there is a devata that allows for the function of the adhyatmika part in relationship to the adibhotika part. The devata is vayu here. So this verse is describing these three, how they manifest in the universal form of the Lord. And Prabhupada is taking the point here very simply. He's taking that point. That only when they manifest in the universal form first can it manifest for the individual bodies of the jivas. He writes here, I'm just doing the reading here. So the living entity can see only when the Lord sees, the living entity can smell when the Lord smells, and so on. The idea is that the living entity cannot do anything independently. He can simply think of doing something independently, but he cannot act independently. So even this thinking, Prabhuji was telling me this morning, even this thinking, you cannot really do independently. He was describing, he got the fog, he got COVID, and he was like in a brain fog. So he was remembering that, reading this sentence, that even that thinking, you cannot really do independently. That means here that the jiva has some ability to make the choices. In other words, when these three purushas are acting together, senses, sense devata, sense organ, and the jiva is inside that, and he's conditioned by that. So he has a tendency to be a statistic. In other words, people are conditioned in the same way. And because people are conditioned in the same way, you can basically predict what they're going to do, right? In the material world, everyone has a certain biological conditioning. We have a certain psychological conditioning. And there's a huge, especially nowadays, sociological conditioning. And because of that, our activities are very predictable, right? So we have tendency to be a statistic. But even though we're under so much pressure of these conditionings, we still have the ability to choose another way, isn't it? If you didn't have the ability to choose another way, you couldn't actually be a devotee. Huh? To whom is the Shastra spoken to? Is Shastra spoken to the modes of material nature? The inert matter? No, they're spoken to the jiva. So if the jiva didn't have an ability to choose another way, even under the duress of all these biological and sociological pressures, then there would be no purpose for Shastra also. So that means, in this sense, that's how I'm taking this, that's how I'm understanding Prabhupada's word. He has some ability to choose another way. He has some independence. This is called kartritva of the jiva. The jiva has, intrinsic to his character, knowership, enjoyership, and doership. That is part of his nature, inherently. You have the ability to know things, right? You have the ability to experience things in this world, and you have the ability to do things, agency. Obviously, all these inherent faculties are unlimited, but they are there. So this ability to do things is called kartritva. It is part of the nature of the jiva. Although sometimes Krishna describes in the Gita, for example, pakritihi kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimudhatma kartaham iti manyate. Right? He says, due to the big ahankara, the jiva thinks he is doing everything, which is actually being done by the modes of material nature, right? But this language Krishna uses, ahankara vimudatma kartaha iti manyate. He thinks. So who is doing the thinking? Who is this iti manyate? Who's doing the thinking? Because Krishna is saying he thinks that he is a doer of activities that are carried out by Prakriti. So who's doing the thinking in this verse? What is the answer? The jiva doing the thinking. Why you say not mine? Why not the mind? I thought the mind is the thinking.
Well, the mind is just a sense.
The mind is just a sense. If the mind was thinking, I am doing things, then he is part of Prakriti, right? So if the mind is thinking, I am the doer of things, in a sense he is correct, according to this particular verse, right? So the thinking here must be someone that is outside looking in and becoming confused. So that is the jiva. He thinks. So that means he has that nourishment and he has the ability to think. This is also part of agency. So he has the ability to choose another way, even though he's under the duress of all these pressures in the psychophysical dimension. So he has some ability, but that ability is minute because he himself is minute. Or you can say dependent. So this independence in thinking is there by the grace of the Lord. But the thinking can be given shape by the grace of the Lord. And therefore the common saying is that man proposes and God disposes. I didn't really fully get that sentence. But the quality of the jiva, the qualities of the jiva that are inherent to the jiva, like agency or nourishment, they are originally part of Paramatma. So from the Mamai Vangsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, right? So Paramatma is having these qualities. And the jiva as an anksha of Paramatma, he also has these qualities, but in minute form. Not like the Purusha, but in a minute form. So that means it is the Lord's grace that he has this ability. And also by the Lord's grace, those abilities can be given shape. Prabhupada said his thinking can be given shape. I can only understand to me when Krishna speaks Shastra, then he has the ability to give shape to his thinking in a way that it can help him become free of the dependency on matter and become fully dependent on Krishna and that way experience greater freedom. Otherwise, he is doomed to the bewilderment of identification with matter and thus being dependent on that particular shelter. So persons who claim to be independent, they have to demonstrate that. That is the last part of the purport. So many people are claiming like that. Even devotees or people that you care about, they make this claim, but they do it in a different way. They do it in a special way. They make claim like this, I'll always be there for you. What type of claim is that? I'll always be there for you, I'll always support you. No, homie, you're not independent. The only person who can say I'll always be there for you is someone who is completely independent, isn't it? So even sometimes devotees in our sentimentality, we may say that to one another. I'll always be there for you, I'll always support you. You can say like that, but you should give caveats. I'll always be there for you, provided, I'm in good health, I'm not angry, I'm not, wallowed out in Maya for a period, provided I'm not, like this. You have to give caveats because we are not an independent entity. So if you're not an independent entity, you cannot actually give shelter to anyone because you're under some other forces, right? What is this section in 1st Canto, chapter 13? So the Vidura and Dhritarashtra, they've left, and Yudhishthira is very distressed by this, right? He's very distressed that they suddenly disappeared. So he's hooting, hollering about it, crying. And suddenly Narada Muni appears. And then Narada Muni chastises him. He said, you are thinking you're going to give protection to them? But you are already under, he uses this word, kala, karma, gunadhina. You are under the grip of kala, karma, and the gunas. So someone who is under the grip of these three, how they will give shelter to others. You're under the, Prabhupada uses language, the kala sarpa, the snake of time. So you're like a little mouse, the snake of time is like this, about to devour you. You don't see the snake. They have some image like this. Maybe you've seen the snake about to devour the mouse. You have seen like this, some image or a bird. And the bird or the mouse is not aware of that. So the mouse is telling the other mouse that, I'll always be there for you, bro. In the meantime, the snake about to eat both of them and finish them off. So how you will give shelter if you're under all these powerful forces? Kala, karma, right? You tell, the husband will tell the wife, I'll always support you. Then he gets some very serious disease, and then she has to support him. These things happen all the time because his karma fructified like that somehow. He got some disease. Now he is needing support from the wife. And guna. The gunas are always shifting. When I'm in Sattva Guna, I said I'll always be there for you. Then next day, I got into a little bit of Rajas and Tamas, and then I had different mentality. Now I'm against you. So for someone who is under such powerful forces and not independent, how they can give shelter to others? They cannot be the ashraya. So even devotee friendship, the way we give shelter, sadhus give shelter, is by directing our consciousness towards the real shelter that is Krishna. That is what it means to be a friend to the living entities, a friend to each other also. We remind one another who is the real ashraya. I'll be there for you by telling you about Krishna. And then you have the responsibility to take shelter of that ashraya. You understand? So this idea is coming. All these things are being discussed here to show that the jiva, although he is called as an ashraya, he is not an independent ashraya. He is a dependent ashraya. Only Krishna is an independent. So we should take shelter of that independent ashraya. And that way we can experience the happiness. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I think you guys go until 7:50. Was that what I was told? So I like to leave some time for some other ideas to float around in the discussion, or some questions if anyone wants to ask anything or give some comment, bring some other angle.
I'll make some comment.
Yeah.
Just what you're saying at the end, that only Krishna can give shelter. It's like these big demons like Hiranyakashipu, who tried to take shelter of Lord Brahma, and Ravana tried to take shelter of Lord Shiva, and all these Bomasur and Banasur tried to take shelter of Shiva. But in the end, when Krishna appeared on the scene, he said no one could help these guys.
Right, finished.
Finished off.
Yeah, other example, Durvas Muni running, looking for the shelter from the chakra. And finally, he had to take shelter of the devotee. But then what did the devotee do? He himself took shelter of Krishna and prayed to the chakra, please release this fellow. So this idea here. Some other comments? Someone wants to make some question?
Any questions about this comment? But I do have a comment.
Yes, our comments are always easier than questions, isn't it?
As you see, like the different faculties we have in the smelling. I was just hearing the pastime Prabhupada. He would have these flowers in the courtyard, I think in Los Angeles, and devotee would bring it to him, and Prabhupada would smell the flowers, and he would spend like so much time smelling flowers. He said that the fragrance from these flowers actually regulates the life airs.
The fragrance from the flowers regulates the life airs.
So I was just thinking, just how Krishna has made like this perfect arrangement for if you're in this world, and we can learn how to utilize these different things in order to engage in service.
Yes. It also speaks, if the fragrance is regulating the life airs in the body, it also means we are dependent on nature, isn't it? That is the point of this section of the Bhagavatam. So if even the life air is being regulated by the fragrance of the flowers, how dependent we are. Now the demons, they're very good at destroying the very thing that we are dependent on. Nature, right? Science today has become very much science versus nature. And their antagonism towards God, they've become antagonistic towards God's nature also. And so now they've put themselves as opposition. But they are needing that nature in order to exist. And now they're destroying that nature. And just like this picture is there, or image, maybe it's like a meme, where the guy's sitting on the branch and he's cutting the branch, but he's sitting on the side that's going to fall down when he's finished cutting. So this is going on in the material world because they don't understand all the you can say complicated and complex symbiotic relationships of the actual gross physical body and subtle bodies to the nature around it. They see as separate vision, pratak bhav. They don't see it as one whole organic entity, and I'm just a part of that organism. This is on the material platform. So then they become like an autoimmune disease. You know what is autoimmune disease? Autoimmune disease is when the body attacks itself. So adverse living entities become like autoimmune disease, attacking the organism that is supporting us. So then nature is like, all right, you want to be like that? I got to take care of business. Some flood comes, some drought, finish off a hole, some COVID, pandemic. That is also questionable, but these things will come actually, these big devastations. Because we're like autoimmune disease, destroying everything. So nature will have to take care of business, clear it up. So that example speaks to that point also. Okay. Anyone else want to say anything? What have you understood? Dylan. G.
That Krishna's blackness is non-material.
Jai. Krishna's blackness is non-material. Very good.
When you ask what do we think of when we hear about Krishna's blackness, I think about Govinda.
I'm thinking about this Govinda here, the deity. That was a very nice answer. I would have been stumped if I got that answer. I would have got stumped. Yeah, it's true. But yeah, the idea is that we have no reference for the spiritual prototypes of which these material things are like a cheap facsimile. So when you hear things described in the Shastra about the spiritual realm, the only reference you have are the material facsimiles. So you actually don't understand the spiritual prototype, so to speak. When the deities in Chicago, Shri Shri Kishore Kishori, they are made out of white marble. If this is white marble. So one gentleman there, I was doing the book distribution, and one gentleman, we tried to stop him. He knew about Shri Shri Kishore Kishori. Apparently he had come to the devotees earlier, but he was very antagonistic. And he said, because Krishna is black, and it says so in the Shastra, Krishna is black, so why you have Kishore Kishori as white? He was very much disturbed by this thing. I said, Krishna is also white, what's the problem? He has Shukla color also. And he said, no, it's a deviation. He was very upset. And he said, this is deviation, and you will sell out because, but I'm like, what black you are thinking of, bro? The black you are thinking of is not the black of Krishna. We actually have no context of that particular black. And monsoon cloud color and so on. He was very upset. Then I said, because I'm also have the internal racism, that's what they said. That's how I've been diagnosed by many of my peers, that you have the internalized racism. So because I had a problem, I said, you are, nonsense. I'll not talk to you. Well, all this nonsense, Christians black, nonsense. But its point is like this, we have no reference, so it's very hard. Without Krishna's grace, then it's very hard to understand these things. So that is the meaning of that verse that I also quoted, Buddhindriya Mano Prana. So just by Krishna's grace, you've been given the faculties by which you can understand matter. So by that same grace, you can be empowered to understand spiritual subject matter. That is the answer that is embedded in that particular verse. You got grace in the form of these faculties to understand matter, right? Whose grace is that? Dylan, whose grace? Can't go wrong there, huh? Jaganath Ashajat Prabhu. He's given these faculties by which you can. So by the same grace, you can be given the faculty by which you can understand the spiritual subject. That is the idea there. So the words that are ordinarily material, they can be infused by the grace of the Lord to understand spiritual subject matter. That's why this verse is coming. Tadvag visargo janataga viplavo yasman pratishokam abhavadatipi. You know this verse? Narada Muni's teachings. Tadvag visargo. What does that mean? Those words, tadvag, which are describing the Bhagavatam, visarga, they are another type of creation. He's saying that the material worlds are like a place of pilgrimage for crows, right? But those words that describe the Supreme Lord, they are another type of creation. And Prabhupada translates it, is meant to bring about a revolution in the lives of the misdirected civilization, right? That's how he translates it. Janataga viplavo. They're meant to destroy the sin to do that. Even if imperfectly composed. Amen. So how they have that power? They have the power to do this. So how they have that power? So the idea is that by the mercy of Prabhu, that's been infused with another potency by which that can be accomplished. So one potency allows you to accomplish material things, and another potency allows you to accomplish spiritual things. So in all ways, we are dependent on the grace of the Supreme Lord. This idea is coming. Okay, so we'll stop here. 7:50 now. Hariom Tat Sat. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Go Premanandi.